Hi everyone, it's Cheryl and welcome to take 2 of this video. Alright camera, focus in. Come on, you can do it. There you go. Okay, so I tried earlier to do this video and I was having camera malfunction. So I'm going to try this again. This is my series part 1 on how to cover journals with fabric so that you have nice looking corners. And that's my main only emphasis is the corners, because let's face it, if the corner of your journal doesn't look right, your journal is not going to look right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about fabric. And I mean, you can use any type of fabric. You just have to make some adjustments for thicknesses. You know, the thicker the fabric, the more pile it has on it, or whatever nap I guess they call it. Then you're going to have to allow for that when you do the corners on your journal. What I aim for is the least amount of bulk possible when I do mine. A little bit about fabrics. In my last video that didn't turn out, I covered this little, it's called a snack bag book and if most of you are probably familiar with Cat Hand on YouTube, this is her little, she does there's a Facebook group, and it is Mixed Media Morsels. And this is the project for this year is the snack bag books. And it's just a little bitty journal, and then Cat gives out, you know, what it is like. I haven't done this months yet, but it's color. And so I haven't done that one yet, but then they're all bound up in these little journals. And at the end of the year, we're all going to have a neat little journal full of our creations to look back on. And anyway, I did do that on the previous video. Sorry about this thing not wanting to stay in focus here. I don't know what its problem is. Probably the color of the thing. So I'll put some red on there, which is the piece of fabric I'm going to be using to do my corner if I have enough of it. I've got another piece over here, so I guess we have plenty. Okay, so the main thing for those of you who don't sew with this is your fabric, and I like to use like a cotton or a polycotton blend because it's the easiest fabric to use. It's, you know, every fabric has its thickness, and when you start rounding corners, the thickness can pile up really quick. And so I like those, but there's stuff like Ultra Suede, there's, anything. You know, you could use anything. Just keep in mind that your stuff like taffeta, satins, and that tend to ravel and fray out on the edges really bad. Like, this is a piece of satin, and I think you can see there what I'm talking about. You just touch it, and you got all these little funky fibers going on there that you probably don't want. So to get on with this, all fabric, for those of you who don't sew, have what they call a selvage edge. Now you buy your fabric by the yard, but it's also going to be so wide, like 45, or some of the older fabrics used to be like 36. And each edge on the width of the fabric looks like this. I don't know if you can see that, maybe, but it has no give at all. And that is to keep it from raveling. And when it's you know, on the bolt and stuff. It's the way that the manufacturers finish off the edges of your fabric. Your fabric all has a grain. Your grain will run with the selvage edge. If you don't have a selvage edge, there are ways to check your grain. Your grain is not gonna give very much when you pull it. It's gonna stay pretty much the way it is. If you go against the grain, you're gonna get a little bit of stretch. See that? Now this fabric has a little more stretch than some. And if you go on the bias, which is a diagonal, you're going to get a lot of stretch. And in my last video, or maybe a part 4, because I'm planning on doing 3 of these, possibly a 4, we're going to talk about bias and when bias is good. Now you might think bias is good in rounding a corner, but any fabric, even a tightly woven fabric, the bias can get away from you and cause all kinds of ripples and all kinds of funky little things going on. So what we're going to do is we're going to go with the grain. And when you're doing a journal, it's preferable, at least to me, to have the grain of your fabric running the length of your journal. Not the width, but the length. Okay, so what I've done here, and this is just so that you can see it better, is I made a big rounded corner and I kind of freehand cut it with the scissors, so it's not real even. I've got a little bump up there on it. And I really hate to use my sewing scissors for this because paper is not good for scissors. So if you have a good set of scissors, don't cut paper with them like I just did. I'm going to see if I can get this to go around this corner, if this piece of fabric is going to be big enough, and it's going to be just big enough. Now what I'm going to do also is I'm going to fold this, because there's another little trick I do with my journal. So pretend this is the spine. We're going to pretend that's the spine of our journal, okay? It's obviously not even a journal, but we're going to pretend this is the spine. And this is a little trick that helps make it easier when you go to do your, you lay your fabric down on your journal. Another thing I wanted to touch on before I start is if your fabric has a more open weave where it's, it really gives a lot, frays a lot, that kind of stuff, you can use, it's called fusible webbing. And it'll have a smooth side and it'll have a rough side. And as you can see, the rough side is filled with little bumps. Now these little bumps are your glue. And what you do is you lay it down on the back side of your fabric and then press with an iron for 10 seconds or so. A cotton setting is good, but you want your iron dry. You don't want the steam on your iron. So, but the packages will all give you directions on using it. You can buy it by the yard. You can get different weights. This is the very thinnest. You can get a medium, and I believe you can get a heavyweight also. And I just bought this at Walmart. It's just a package of the fusible webbing. I think it's about a yard. No, 3 yards. Wow. Okay. I didn't even know that. I just bought the package because I knew I wanted some. And I did use it on the back of this journal, and that was just so I could show you guys, but unfortunately that video didn't turn out. But I will tell you, when you're using the fusible webbing, trace around your journal, exactly around it. Don't cut it any bigger, because as you will see when we go to do these corners, we're going to cut our fabric a little wider. You're not going to want the fusible webbing in your corners, because it's going to add that bulk that you don't want. So, with that said, let's get on with this corner, and I may want to use the bigger piece. So this piece has no selvage edge because it's been cut, so I've got to try to find my grain, and I believe my grain is going this way. This way I pull and I get very little, I get a lot of resistance to it. If I go this way, I get a little more stretch. And of course, if I go on the bias, I get a lot of stretch. So we're going to say that the grain is going this direction. So one of the first things I do when I go to start a journal, and you could glue your fabric down and use something like Mod Podge or matte medium or something to glue it onto here, or just glue. However, in my experience, a lot of times it shows. If you don't have a very smooth layer, you're going to get every little bit's going to show because it is going to soak into your fabric. Also, I did try some fabric. It's the same type of fabric, different color. I tried matte gel medium on it, and it'll give you a stiff feel like canvas, and where it's gone through to the other side, it'll be slick. Okay, a little bit slick. With the Mod Podge, I got a stiffer fabric, and I got a lot of, it's slick on the back because it's a layer of the Mod Podge on the back. So it really soaks in when you use those. Anyway, back to what we're doing. So let me get my sleeves out of the way here. I got my jacket on. I'm a little bit chilly tonight. We just had beautiful weather, and now we're getting rain mixed with snow, and possibly snow tomorrow. Some areas are going to get snow. So yeah, so my little trick is to just take some glue, and I mean, if this is just like a file folder journal, then just run a line of glue down your spine, right down your spine. You can run it right down the middle, you can run it a little bit to either side, and then lay your fabric down on that. And that is going to hold your fabric in place, and you can see, I don't know if you can see, but you see that little bit of white? That's the glue coming through, but I'd rather have a little bit of glue than a lot of glue. And if you really want it to lay down good, you could run it out around the edges of your journal, but just always keep in mind there's a chance that it will show through, you know, and your glue is going to be visible. Okay, if you want, you can take a pencil before you even get to the glue stage. You can take a pencil and you can just trace around your journal cover. Then what you would do is you would go about 1/4 of an inch out. Now I'm just going to freehand cut mine because I'm pretty good at guessing 1/4 of an inch anymore. But if you're not, you can trace out a 1/4 inch line around, because you're going to need a 1/4 inch around the edge. When we get to books, that's a little different. But we'll deal with that when we get to actually covering a book, an actual book. On this, a lot of people like at least a 1/2 inch edge, and that's fine. But when you get up to your corner, you're going to have to cut it down to 1/4 of an inch to reduce that bulk. And it'll become apparent why when I get into this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to try to freely cut a 1/4 inch edge all the way around. I'm not in frame, sorry. And if I have a little extra there, it's not going to matter. I mean, if I don't make the straightest cuts in the world, it's not a big deal. Okay, so don't stress out about it if your cuts aren't exactly straight. If you've got a little more than a 1/4 inch, it's alright. You can always trim it down like I'm getting right now. I'm going a little beyond my 1/4 inch and stay that 1/4 inch or a little more all the way around the edge. All the way around your curve, all the way to the end of your project. And it's going to be like that. Whoops. Okay, see, just because the spine is the only part I've glued, it falls away. But it's a small piece and not too big of a deal. Okay, now you have a curve here, and this curve is going outward. It's an outer curve. It's curving around to the outside. Now I can see another little corner. I guess I don't do this with your good scissors. These were good. They're not as great as I wish they were. But anyway, okay, so keep it in mind, this is how you take care of an outward curve. All right? I know that probably some of you have even had basic sewing that says clip your curves. Yes, you clip your curves. But in this case, when it's an outward curve, you clip little triangles into it. Like that. Little triangle-shaped notches. I don't know if you can see that. There you go. Sorry about my fingers. I've been doing stuff and my hands don't want to come clean right now. And so you just keep doing this all the way around your curve. Now don't worry if you start right at the edge of your curve. You can go back a ways from your curve also, so I'm going to clip back here. Don't worry about if your little triangles are even. The only thing you need to worry about is you need to leave a little bit of space between your journal cover and your clipping. You do not want to clip right up against where your journal cover goes, because then you're going to have some bad looking corners. So I'm just going to go ahead right now and clip this, and I hope I'm in frame, but my big deal more is getting it clipped right so that I can show you. And sometimes you got to go back and clip again because you didn't get all the way to the corner of your little triangle. This is not an exact science, at least not when I do it, but I know it works. So you just keep clipping so that it looks, when you're all done, it should look like that. Like somebody took a really wacky pair of pinking shears to the edge of the fabric. And on the subject of pinking shears, they're not going to work. They're not going to give you a good even corner because they're just not a deep enough cut. But anyway, you just cut the thing, but leave that little bit of fabric between the point that you cut inward and your I keep wanting to call it a folder because it's file folder. But between that and your journal cover. So then what you want to do is you want to just run some glue around the. I always start at your curves, okay? And always do all 4 of your corners first. That way you can get it to lay down nice. If you pull in too tight, it's going to show you because your journal's going to start to buckle if it's something on like on a file folder and that. So my advice is always do your corners first. I'm going to put down just a little more glue. You don't need a ton of glue to tack this down. A thicker fabric will take more glue, but it's just adjustments we make. Now, when you start this, always start in the middle of your curve. Don't start on the edges. Always start in the middle. Because what you'll do is you'll start laying your middle ones down, and then you go around taking one at a time if possible. Sometimes you end up with two, but you want to pull enough to stretch them in with your fingers, and you want the ones, once you've done your center one, you want to start rounding your other ones and pushing them toward the center. Okay? See, I'm taking my finger down and I'm making a slight little push toward the center. This one is not toward the center. And if you do make a mistake and you don't get them pushed toward the center and they start looking a little wonky, you can go ahead and just pull them back up. It's not going to hurt anything. So now I'm down here to the edge and I've got one piece left that I need to glue, and I need to turn it toward the corner like so. And there you have it. Nice little corner. Nicely rounded. You can't feel any lumps or bumps up on there. This is what it's going to look like on the inside. You're going to have your middle ones, and then you're just going to kind of push those toward, and you're going to be pulling on your fabric a little bit. You don't want to pull too much, but you want to pull, and as you go you can see whether or not your corner is nicely rounding. If not, you know, don't panic. Just take a breath, and if you have to, peel one of these little things up and move it, you know, push it a little more toward the middle, pull it in a little more. It's going to be fine. It just takes a little bit of practice, and you know, once you practice a couple times, I am positive you will be able to turn a very nice corner also. Then you can start folding in your sides, and it really doesn't matter once you're done what sides go first, how you do them. Again, just pull in with your fingers, and I find that just not real hard pressure, but just enough, and pulling the fabric while you're doing it will get everything laid down nice and smooth. And when you get to an edge like this, suppose this is the end of your journal, you want to make sure that this fabric that you turned is going as straight out as possible, okay? You don't want it so you've got it so it's going, I don't know if I can even show this, my fingers are going up like that, and you don't want it so it's coming in a downward. You want it to just go out nice and straight. Okay? So I'm going to glue my other side down, and I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on there. I'm just going to take it, fold it over, and then just put a pressure on it to pull it inward. And see, this is another thing that happens sometimes. Your fabric will absorb your glue too quick, and then it does not want to lay down right, and it takes a little bit more working with it, pulling on it and stuff like that. Okay, the only place where I see I have a little problem, and I don't know if you can see it, is if you look at it on that side, I've got a little bump right here. Not a big deal, but I don't like it. So I'm going to take this up, and you might lose a little bit of your paper there. See that little white spot? That's a little bit of I'm using cardstock, but I call it a folder because generally I use file folders for this. So I'm going to put some more glue on, and I'm going to bring this and I'm going to pull it a little more, and I'm going to realize that bump was not this piece here that I just put down. What that is, because that's my little piece right there in the corner. I don't know if I can get it taken up or not. I don't know if that's in my way. Trust me, if you're careful, you can peel it right back up, which I just did. And I'm going to pull this back again. This is a good thing this happened because it shows you what can happen. I'm going to put down, this is a brand new bottle, come on. Down a little more glue right there, and I'm going to work with that little piece first. Sorry about that. I took out of there, and I'm going to work it a little more toward this side, toward the middle. Now I'm going to put the glue back down here again. I should have done that the second time, but I didn't notice it. So I'm going to put my glue back down here, just like so. I'm I'm going to pull this down, and you're going to find that after gluing and stuff, your fabric may stretch a little bit on you. Not a big deal, not a big deal at all. You can work it out once you got it turned over. Now, I don't see that little bump up there anymore. I see just a nicely turned corner. So that's it. That's the secret of doing your corners. Remember, the smaller of a corner you have, like most of them run a 1/2 inch, I think is probably the favorite size for making corners on journals. It's the same thing. I'm going to show you in this little book. It's the same thing. The very same thing. You just cut your little notches, start in the middle, move them toward the corner, pull them in a little as you go, apply a little pressure, move them toward the corner, and you should end up with a nicely turned corner on all of your journals. So that concludes part 1. When I come back the next time, I'm going to show you how to do I'm going to do a circle, and we're going to cut out the middle of the circle so that we can do curves that go the other way. So I hope that you all enjoyed this, and I hope that you will try it on your own journals, because there's no reason we shouldn't do fabric covered journals. There's a lot you can do with them. You can paint on them once you're done. You can paint on them before you put it on. You can stamp on it. You can do all kinds of stuff. So, yeah. That's just one handy little tip to get a nicely rounded corner. Just know which way to clip. Thank you all for joining me. I hope you all have a good night, because it's night here. And I will see you soon. Bye-bye.